Hello everyone, it's Yvonne here to do the reading for the lovely sign of Scorpio. Scorpio, thank you for joining me on this channel. I want to say if you've been here with me for a long time, thank you for all your love and support. If you are new to the channel, I hope you enjoy the videos and decide to subscribe. We're going to use the Cosmic Tarot for your reading today. But before we get into the reading, I'd just like to talk about the fact I love it when the cards jump out. We have the Seven of Wands coming up with the Four of Cups. Don't take the first offer. Be willing to stand fast here because there's something better coming its way. Scorpio, if you're interested in learning how to do the tarot and want to learn from me because you like the way I do things, then I've recently opened a membership channel on my channel. You would need to become a deluxe member in order to access the classes. We've just completed the major arcana, so I'll be doing the minor arcana and then we're going to get into some live classes. So if you're interested in doing that, press the join button or the membership button, which are both underneath my picture. So Scorpio, whether you are a Scorpio sun, a Scorpio moon, a Scorpio rising, or even you have Scorpio in your Venus, I'm a Scorpio rising, you can watch this video. You are not limited to just watching one video. You have a myriad of signs in your chart. And if you are interested in finding out more about that, Google a natal chart or a birth chart, put in the details of your birth. If you have the time of birth, you'll get an accurate reading on your rising or ascendant as well. Good fun. You can get a free report from many channels, so it's good to download and have a look. Why do those planets land in your signs and what do they mean for you in terms of your personality? All right, so cards are quite lively for you, Scorpio. Careful of scammers too. They are rampant at the moment, not just in the tarot world, everywhere in the world. I had a woman ring me up the other day and say, I'm just processing this card for $500 on your eBay account, I think it was, might have been Etsy, whatever it was. And she actually rang and spoke to me, and I got a bit shocked by it. I said, no, sorry, not me, and I put the phone down. Now, what is it? These people think it's okay to diddle you out of money all the time. So please be careful. Be careful. If you get an email or you get a phone call, just put it down and go and ring your financial institution yourself, or your bank or whatever it is. Go and ring it yourself or go to your website and do it under sort of security. I'm absolutely appalled. I've seen really, really smart people get caught and it just blows me away. All right. So, Eight of Pentacles. Funnily enough, this card is coming up quite a lot lately. I'm not sure if there's a lot of people out there working on their own issues, childhood trauma, whatever it is rampant at the moment. And I feel like people are really understanding that a lot of the habits and ways of doing things they've got into as they've got older are all part of that childhood trauma. You know, some people will say to me that they could see it, but they didn't understand how it connected. So if you're, sort of have funny ways of doing things that you started to question why you do it that way, or your relationships are sort of bottom up and they don't seem to work out, then probably a good idea to start having a little bit of healing time and trying to understand why you do things the way you do. Is it a bad thing? Probably not, but it's good to understand. So if it is a pattern you're repeating, you can go back to the beginning. And I really feel with this sort of cycle here, it makes me feel like perhaps you've discovered that you're doing something a certain way that maybe somehow or another isn't serving you anymore. Sometimes people say to me, what do you mean by cycles or patterns? And I think the thing is to remember, if something happens a certain way and you can remember doing it that way before and it turned out the same way, then there is a pattern there or a cycle there. And it's usually a good idea to really investigate. So for example, if you find you're always dating someone who is, a little bit on the narcissistic side or a lot on the narcissistic side, and you've done it more than once, then maybe there's something within you that needs to be healed so you don't do that again. We see a lot of this happening in twin flame relationships when the people who've come together have both had very traumatic, abusive, or neglectful childhoods. and they're really attracted to each other. And psychologically, if you take it from the psychological point of view, you often find people with severe attachment rejection, abandonment fears meet someone who's more likely to do that to them. Why? Not really sure. I don't think the world of psychology can really get that either. We just put out some sort of energy, and I think this is why it's sort of becoming a bit more sort of open, not quite as mystified, because spiritually and psychologically we have a crossover. So we are looking at some sort of pattern, but I feel like you may be working on this at the moment. You're taking time out to heal here, and you're ending some sort of cycle. I feel like it's changing the way you see things or the way that you are doing things. So you're trying to make some sort of decision. You may be digging deep into your subconscious, but it's making you feel good to find out these things. It's making you feel good to understand how you've been doing things and how to change the way you've been doing things. All right, let's get into it. We have the Empress coming through. That is absolutely beautiful. All right, with the Temperance card. Temperance and the Sun. I've just done this with the other deck of cards too. All major arcanas. Look at that. The World card. I'm almost scared to turn the next one. Oh my goodness, the Tower. This has been the way through 3 different decks. The Lovers. The all major arcanas on the table. The Queen of Swords coming through. The 7 of Wands. And the 4 of Cups, which were the 2 cards that jumped out at the beginning. And I said to you, the 6 of Wands is a victory card, which is great. Powerful reading for you, Scorpio. You do have the Tower here, which for me represents sign of Scorpio. Can represent Aries too, so there's quite a bit of Aries energy, Leo energy. And Sagittarius and Gemini. So if you're dealing with any of those people, this reading is much more relevant to you. Doesn't mean it's not relevant to other people, but more so for you. There is something here that you need to pay attention to, and I think you've realized it here, and it did come through in the What's Cracking reading today. Maybe you are always meeting people who seem to be very focused on themselves and not really feel you're included in the relationship. You know, it's really hard sometimes when you sort of raise that issue with somebody and they don't see it for themselves because they don't want to see it. They don't want to see whatever's going on there. There is a victory here. So I feel like you're either about to meet someone. Okay, let's start at the beginning. So to me, this is beautiful energy. Whether you're male or female, doesn't matter. The Empress energy applies to everybody. So what it is saying here is that you are starting to understand your feminine side or the feminine aspects of yourself. And one of the feminine aspects is that of intuition, of inner knowing, of understanding. And if you're a man, you need to have feminine energy. And if you're a female, you need to have masculine energy. It's what drives us, which gets our logical minds going and gets us really working towards our goals. So both need to be balanced, and you have the balance card here. And I feel like here in this energy, what it's saying is whatever you've been doing, you are finally starting to see the results of your labor, or you're finally starting to understand what it is you've been doing up until this point in time, which has not been serving you. To me, seeing the Sun coming out with the World card means that you've found something that you are completing. So whatever you've been working on, you've brought it round to completion. And I see that with this cycle here. So what I feel like is there's something that you are cutting yourself free from, some way of thinking, way of doing things that you're cutting yourself free from. You may have been always having relationships here that have been very destructive. You may have had a pattern of meeting people who, I always think it's like they don't respect you. You're there as an addition to their life or their way of being. They see you as a benefit. That's it. And I'm sorry, but I don't even know how to explain this to people, because I think that we think that this is sort of rare when we're encountering it ourselves. And when we get out into the big wide world, we realize that this is not rare at all. It happens to a lot of people. There are a lot of people out there who are extremely selfish, self-centered, and you're just the icing on the cake for them. So what I feel like you're doing here is I feel like you're about to meet someone. And those two cards that jumped out said to me, don't put up with it, wait for the next offer. So it may be that you're going to meet someone who's going to do the same thing as somebody else has done previously. Maybe you're seeing that pattern in action because you've become an observer, because you've started to see things for yourself. Because what happens is when we're not observing and we're in our heads, we get locked into a fantasy, we overthink things, we do the procrastination. They're all signs of trauma, childhood abuse and neglect, maybe different levels. I've got somebody standing here with me. But it doesn't really matter, because at the end of the day, it needs to be healed for you to understand how to not keep doing it. And I did do a lot of this in the What's Cracking reading this morning. So I feel like you're going to meet somebody here and it's going to show you that pattern, how you ignore the pattern, how you ignore your own boundaries, how you don't take notice of things, how you ignore red flags, whatever it is, you are going to be shown that. And Spirit is saying something better is coming along. Don't get caught up in that same cycle. You've learned from what you've done. So let's have a look. So we have a pattern. You look like you're healing the pattern because there seems to be an ending to a negative way of doing things. I do like this because you're changing your thinking. You're making some sort of decision to unearth something that's hidden deep within you to become the Queen of Wands. So whatever this is, it's like you may have a little bit of testing from Spirit to see if you've learned. And a lot of us find it hard to learn because we keep meeting the same person over and over again. The problem is they're so good at making you fall in love with them. They're so good at creating that environment that makes you feel so good about yourself. And then one day you wake up and you think, I've done it again. And you're a year into a relationship and you've got to call it quits. So hopefully, Scorpio, whoever this is and whatever's going on here, you may be understanding this pattern now and you may be able to stop it from happening again. All right, let's read you an oracle card. All right, flexible. It's a very interesting card to come out. 9 and 1 is 10. So again, that sort of makes me feel like you're coming to the end of a cycle here. Teachability, open-mindedness, being adaptable without compromising what's important, and that's you. You are important here. Don't be so taken up in a new romance that you forget to see the person you're dealing with. Eyes open, observing. A tree's roots are solidly planted in the ground, yet its branches can bend in a hurricane, whereas a rigid structure like a building would come crashing down. That's the tower right there. So I feel like here, it says here, in every relationship, it's important to be open to new experience and learning new things. And it says, let go of rigidity. So really understanding that sometimes we have an idea in our mind of wanting something, wanting somebody in our lives, wanting somebody to love, wanting to get married, wanting to have children. But we compromise our own values sometimes in order to get that. Don't compromise your values. Remember that you have got somebody there that you're going to have with you for the rest of your life feasibly. So you don't want to end up picking someone who doesn't really give two hoots about who you are. You know, there are so many red flags. You kind of, like I always say, that there is nothing more scary than somebody meeting someone who is an open-minded, knowledgeable empath. Read up on the red flags, read up on the dating rules, read up what happens if somebody meets you and they just want to lock you into a relationship because they can put on such an act and such a way of doing things that you just get caught up in the love bombing, you get caught up in the I love you stuff, and you don't really see the person that you're dealing with. And if you're caught up in all of that, you might forget your own value. And what that means, if you're forgetting your own value, is you may get hooked into a relationship with somebody who looks a certain way, but underneath is not that person. Some of us have done it more than once before we've learned that cycle. I don't want you to keep doing it if it's not right for you. So I feel like if you've been doing the work on this, on your childhood, if you've been doing the work on why do I keep having these same relationships with the same person who has a different face, then it's time to go back to the drawing board. But if you're going to date someone which looks like you've just setting out on a new path here, remember to watch for those red flags and watch your boundaries. All right, much love.